Darkness has always held mysteries, stories of creatures lurking in the night, unseen forces preying on the weak. But among them, one legend stands above the rest. The vampire. From the shadowed forests of Eastern Europe to the ruins of ancient civilizations, tales of bloodthirsty creatures have been whispered for centuries. Myths that speak of the undead, cursed souls who rise from their graves to feed on the living. But where did these stories come from? Are vampires purely fiction, or is there a chilling truth hidden behind the myth? Join us as we unravel the origins of these legendary beings, exploring history, folklore, and even real-life cases that may have inspired the terrifying tales of vampires. Long before Dracula, long before Hollywood turned vampires into pop culture icons, ancient civilizations had their own stories of blood-drinking monsters. The concept of creatures that feed on human life is not exclusive to Europe, it spans across cultures and continents. One of the earliest mentions of vampire-like beings dates back to ancient Mesopotamia. The Akkadians, Sumerians, and Babylonians feared demonic entities known as Lilu and Lilitu, spirits believed to drain the life force of sleeping victims. These spectral entities were believed to drain the life force of sleeping victims, leaving them weakened, ill, or worse. Tales spoke of their silent approach, slipping into dreams like a cold wind, feeding on the breath of the living. To ward them off, people invoked protective charms and prayers, hoping to escape the grasp of these unseen terrors that thrived in the darkness. In Greece, the Lamia, a creature cursed by the gods, was said to drink the blood of children. Once a beautiful woman, she was cursed by the gods to become a monstrous being, forever haunted by the loss of her own offspring. Consumed by rage and sorrow, she prowled the night, preying on the young and drinking their blood to sate her endless hunger. Some claimed she could change her form, luring victims with her beauty before revealing her true, ghastly visage. To keep her at bay, families told cautionary tales, hoping the mere mention of her name would be enough to ward off the terror lurking in the dark. In China, the Jiangshi, also known as the hopping vampire, was feared for its ability to drain life energy from the living. Unlike Western vampires, Jiangshi were often depicted with stiff, corpse-like movements, hunting their victims by night. Neither fully dead nor alive, these reanimated corpses moved stiffly, their bound limbs forcing them to lurch and hop in eerie pursuit of the living. With pale, decayed skin and glowing eyes, they sought out victims to drain their qi, the very essence of life. Legends spoke of Taoist priests wielding talismans to subdue them, but those who crossed paths with a Jiangshi rarely lived to tell the tale. As night fell, doors were locked, and breath was hushed, lest the hungry dead come knocking. What's striking is that across all these cultures, the core elements remain the same: undead beings, a thirst for human life, and a terrifying presence in the dark. But why were people so convinced of their existence? The most famous vampire legends originate from Eastern Europe, where stories of the undead weren't just folklore, they were considered real threats. In the 17th and 18th centuries, a wave of vampire hysteria swept through regions like Hungary, Romania, and Serbia. People believed that certain individuals, after death, could return from their graves to torment the living. Villagers reported seeing their deceased loved ones roaming at night, knocking on doors, and even attacking people. To combat this supernatural threat, communities developed various rituals to prevent the dead from rising. Graves were often exhumed, and corpses suspected of vampirism were subjected to brutal measures, staking through the heart, decapitation, or even burning. Folkloric accounts describe eerie signs that identified a vampire's grave, such as a corpse appearing unnaturally preserved, fresh blood at the mouth, or nails and hair continuing to grow. Fear of these nocturnal revenants was so widespread that it even influenced official records and legal proceedings, with some governments issuing decrees on how to handle suspected vampires. This hysteria gradually declined with the rise of Enlightenment thinking, but the legends endured, later inspiring Gothic literature and shaping the modern image of the vampire. But these were not the suave, sophisticated vampires of modern fiction. The vampires of Eastern Europe were described as bloated corpses with ruddy skin, sharp nails, and blood-stained mouths, grotesque, almost unrecognizable from their former selves. Gripped by fear, villagers would exhume bodies suspected of vampirism. If a corpse appeared too fresh, if the nails or hair had grown, or if blood was found in the mouth, it was proof of undeath. The solution? A stake through the heart, decapitation, or burning the body to ash. These rituals were not merely acts of superstition but deeply ingrained cultural responses to unexplained deaths and mysterious illnesses. Diseases like tuberculosis or the plague, which caused victims to grow pale, cough blood, and waste away, were often blamed on a vampire's influence. Families would perform protective rites, such as placing garlic around homes, hanging crucifixes, or even burying bodies face down to prevent them from rising. In some cases, suspected vampires were buried with bricks in their mouths or iron stakes driven through their chests to pin them to their coffins. Though modern science has debunked these beliefs, the fear they inspired continues to echo in folklore, literature, and popular culture, shaping the enduring myth of the vampire. One of the most infamous cases occurred in 1725 in Serbia, involving a man named Peter Plagajowicz. After his death, villagers claimed he returned at night, suffocating his relatives in their sleep. When his grave was opened, his body was found eerily well preserved, with fresh blood at his lips. In terror, the villagers staked his heart and burned his body, an act that would be repeated across Europe for centuries. But could there be a rational explanation for these terrifying reports? Some historians and scientists believe that vampire legends may have been fueled by real medical conditions. One such theory involves porphyria, a rare blood disorder that can cause sensitivity to sunlight, receding gums that expose the teeth, and neurological symptoms that may resemble madness. Porphyria is a rare genetic disorder that affects the production of heme, a critical component of hemoglobin, the protein responsible for transporting oxygen in the blood. People with porphyria may experience a range of symptoms, including extreme sensitivity to sunlight, blistering skin, and a reddish tint to their urine. In the past, these symptoms may have been interpreted as signs of vampirism, especially due to the skin's extreme sensitivity to light and the reddish hue of the urine, which could resemble blood. Additionally, individuals with porphyria sometimes suffer from disfigurement of their gums and teeth, making them appear more pointed and resembling the iconic fangs of vampires. The connection between porphyria and vampire legends likely stems from the condition's rare and mysterious symptoms, which could easily be misinterpreted by communities unfamiliar with the disease. In times when medical knowledge was limited, the appearance of individuals with these symptoms may have sparked fear and superstition, leading to the belief that they were creatures who rose from the grave to prey on the living. This theory, while speculative, suggests that certain aspects of vampire folklore could have been influenced by real-life medical conditions like porphyria, adding a layer of realism to the myth of the undead. Could victims of this disease have been mistaken for vampires? Another possibility is rabies, which was rampant in Eastern Europe during vampire hysteria. The disease can cause aggressive behavior, biting, and even an aversion to light and garlic, strikingly similar to vampire lore. During the height of vampire hysteria in Eastern Europe, rabies outbreaks spread fear and confusion among villagers, possibly fueling beliefs in the undead. The disease, transmitted through animal bites, often from wolves, dogs, or bats, caused victims to develop extreme sensitivity to light, water, and strong odors like garlic. Infected individuals became aggressive, foamed at the mouth, and sometimes bit others in violent fits of rage, eerily resembling the bloodthirsty behavior attributed to vampires. As the disease progressed, sufferers experienced convulsions, delirium, and an unquenchable thirst, yet struggled to drink water due to painful throat spasms, reinforcing eerie similarities to folklore about vampires unable to consume anything but blood. With limited medical knowledge, villagers who witnessed these horrifying symptoms may have believed they were encountering vampires rather than victims of a deadly virus. In some cases, the afflicted died suddenly and mysteriously, only to be followed by new outbreaks in their families or communities, further strengthening fears that the deceased had returned to prey on the living. Desperate to stop the supposed vampires, villagers resorted to exhuming bodies, driving stakes through their hearts, or even burning corpses to prevent further attacks. Though modern science explains these outbreaks as rabies epidemics, at the time, the terrifying symptoms of the disease blurred the line between reality and superstition, fueling the vampire legend that persists to this day. But what about the eerie accounts of corpses appearing fresh after death? Before modern embalming, the process of decomposition was often misunderstood. In some cases, bodies that seemed to grow hair and nails were simply experiencing the effects of tissue retraction. Blood at the mouth? A natural result of decomposition. Yet to the untrained eye, these signs seemed like undeniable proof that the dead were rising. Despite scientific explanations, the vampire myth refused to die. In fact, it only grew stronger, transforming into something far different from the grotesque monsters of folklore. The 19th century saw the birth of Gothic horror literature, giving rise to the seductive, aristocratic vampire we recognize today. In 1819, John Polidori's The Vampire introduced the first refined vampire figure. But it was Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1897 that cemented the vampire's image in popular culture. Count Dracula was not a mindless corpse, but a cunning and charismatic predator, inspired in part by Vlad the Impaler, the ruthless 15th-century Wallachian ruler known for his brutal methods of execution. With the rise of cinema, vampires became even more alluring. From Nosferatu, 1922, to Bela Lugosi's Dracula, 1931, the vampire evolved into an icon of both horror and romance. Today, vampires are more popular than ever, appearing in films, books, and TV shows, from Interview with the Vampire to Twilight. No longer just terrifying monsters, they have become complex characters, sometimes even heroes. This evolution reflects shifting societal values. The vampire is now a vessel for exploring themes like immortality, desire, loneliness, and power. Where once they symbolized disease and death, today's vampires often wrestle with moral dilemmas, personal trauma, and the burden of eternal life. In some stories, they are metaphors for marginalized identities, existing on the fringes of human society. In others, they are romantic antiheroes, tragic figures caught between their monstrous instincts and their lingering humanity. As culture continues to change, so too does the vampire, ever adaptable, ever enigmatic, and still refusing to die. This enduring appeal lies in the vampire's ability to mirror our deepest anxieties and desires. As technology advances and traditional belief systems are questioned, vampires remain a constant, shapeshifters not only in form but in meaning. In the digital age, they take on new guises, corporate predators draining the lifeblood of the working class, or eternal beings struggling with identity in a world obsessed with youth and beauty. Modern reinterpretations have also blurred the lines between monster and human. Series like True Blood and The Vampire Diaries portray vampires navigating complex relationships, politics, and ethics. These stories delve into questions of consent, addiction, and redemption, transforming the vampire into a lens through which we examine our own societal contradictions. Even in the age of scientific skepticism, the myth persists, not because we still fear literal bloodsuckers, but because the vampire continues to speak to what it means to be human. In the end, the vampire's real power isn't in its bite, but in its immortality as an idea, eternally reborn to haunt the dreams of each new generation. So, after centuries of fear, folklore, and fascination, are vampires real? Not in the supernatural sense. There is no scientific evidence of immortal blood drinkers hiding in the shadows. But the idea of vampires continues to influence us. Some individuals today identify as real vampires, claiming to need human blood or energy to feel whole. Whether psychological or symbolic, their existence proves that the legend of the vampire is still very much alive. And while history has debunked the myths, one truth remains: vampires, real or not, will never truly die. They thrive in our stories, our screens, our subcultures, morphing with every era to reflect our darkest desires and deepest fears. From ancient burial practices to TikTok aesthetics, the vampire has journeyed from the graveyard to the global stage, becoming a cultural touchstone that refuses to fade. In many ways, vampires are more than just fiction. They are metaphors for the things we can't quite explain or accept: mortality, forbidden love, otherness, addiction, even the cost of power. They embody our fascination with what lies beyond the veil of death, offering a seductive glimpse into the unknown. So, are vampires real? Not in the flesh and fangs sense, but in the way they continue to capture our imagination, shape our art, and reflect our humanity? Absolutely. The vampire isn't a creature of the night. It's a reflection in the mirror, a timeless shadow that always looks back. And perhaps that's why we keep inviting them in. Vampires endure because they adapt, not just to our fears, but to our fantasies. They have evolved from monstrous threats into romantic figures, tragic heroes, and symbols of rebellion. In a world increasingly obsessed with identity, autonomy, and transformation, the vampire stands as a powerful icon, one that challenges norms while also revealing hidden truths about ourselves. Their presence in modern media isn't just nostalgia, it's relevance. Every generation finds new meaning in the vampire myth, whether it's a cautionary tale, a dark romance, or a metaphor for the human condition. They ask questions we're often afraid to voice. What does it mean to live forever? What would we sacrifice for power? Can the monstrous ever be loved? So no, vampires don't exist in the way old legends claimed, but their story is far from over. As long as we continue to fear death, crave connection, and search for meaning in the darkness, the vampire will remain, lurking at the edges of our imagination, ready to rise again. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the shadows of history. If you enjoyed this exploration of vampires and their origins, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. What do you think? Could there still be a hidden truth behind the vampire legend? Let us know your thoughts. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and beware of what lurks in the night.